Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Will you please honor our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy. Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Laurie.
Here.
Counsel Martin.
Here.
Counsel Mendonça.
Here.
Counsel Mercier.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Counsel Nguyen.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'd recognize Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chambers in memory of Ann Hickey LaLasher, who died last week. Ann was a lifelong member of the now former Sacred Heart Parish, very involved with the church and community. She was one of the first Eucharistic ministers when they were introduced at Sacred Heart. She also worked for a long time at the former Union National Bank in the office of the Chief of Police for UMass Lowell. She was highly regarded in all of those roles, but most importantly, I think she was proudest of her family. She's survived by her 8 children and 19 grandchildren. She's the former wife of Tom Hickey and also Ed LaLasher, but a solid citizen of this city and of the Sacred Heart Parish. Will be truly missed.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I'd like to offer a moment of silence for Jacqueline Condra, mother of Susan Kennedy, mother-in-law to Councilor Edward Kennedy.
Thank you. If you'd all rise in a moment of silence in darkened chambers. We have under the mayor's portion of the agenda a proclamation in recognition of the UMass Lowell's men hockey team championship season. We have a proclamation to offer on behalf of the entire City Council. Whereas the UMass Lowell Riverhawks hockey team put together a phenomenal season, bringing an entire city and region along for the wild ride as they made it to the Frozen Four in Pittsburgh, coming within one goal of competing in the national championship game. And whereas working hard, a team that won just 5 games 2 years ago before the arrival of Division I National Coach of the Year, were quickly slap shooting and hip checking their way to an exciting 28-11-2 season, leaving the perennial Hockey East powerhouses Boston College and Boston University in the dust. The Hockey East Championship and the NCAA Regional Championship. And the Riverhawks players and coaches, even in defeat, reacted with excellent sportsmanship and professionalism, bringing a tremendous amount of pride to the university and city, acting as great representatives of both, and leaving us all looking forward to what next season will bring, given this 23rd day of April 2013. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Dana Skinner, the athletic director. That's my speech. You just gave it. Thank you very much. A lot of old friends in this room. Thank you very much. One of the biggest parts of our success has been the Songus Center. for the university, for the hockey team, and we thank everybody. We all went through some good moments there, and the building has meant a lot for us, and this team certainly put it to work. I'm going to introduce Norm Bazin, our head coach, to accept this proclamation. We're obviously very proud of our student athletes, not only for what they do on the ice, but what they do in the classroom and what they do in this community. They do reading programs in the community, they adopt children, they are one of our strongest academic teams, and they really excel in all phases of the student-athlete experience. Coach Bazin is an alum of the university. He competed here in the old Tully Forum. Was a captain of some great teams back then. He also came back to get his master's degree, and to my knowledge, nobody's corrected me on this, before he came to UMass Lowell, he was two-time Coach of the Year at Hamilton College, and he's been Coach of the Year for 2 years at UMass Lowell. So I believe he may be the only coach who's been Coach of the Year 4 years in a row. So Coach Bazin is going to offer some comments on behalf of the team.
But first, I just want to echo some of Dana's thoughts. Without the Songus Arena Center, we're not the same club. I'm proud to guide a wonderful group of athletes who compete for Lowell with pride every time they step on the ice. And without the Songus Arena Center, it just wouldn't be the same environment. So for that, we thank you. We're proud to accept the proclamation. I accept it on behalf of both my staff and this great group of athletes. And we look forward to competing next year and representing the city of Lowell and UMass Lowell with pride. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks again. Next, we have a communication from Elizabeth Messenger from the Needy Meds program to give the council an update after the long line of players gets through.
Hello, I'm the Director of Outreach at Needy Meds. For all of you who don't know, we're a nonprofit based over in Gloucester, and we started working with Lowell in December of 2011 on a discount card. So we've been offering a free discount card to all of the residents in Lowell. So just a quick update on that. Since we started in December of 2011, we've saved residents over $25,000 on the cost of their medications. And we're also offering a toll-free helpline number now to Lowell residents. It went out in a press release. I have some copies if you want it with the number. But folks who call that number, that'll come to our offices, and people will, ask what kind of help they need with their medications and healthcare costs, give them other phone numbers, and mail out applications and information if they need it to connect them to the resources. So I don't know if we want to pass out copies just so you have it.
Sure. Any discussion on this? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have under the city clerk's portion of the agenda, minutes of the city council meeting of April 16th for acceptance. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the city manager's portion of the agenda. Communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Any discussion? Councilman Donza.
Yes, there was a response to my motion regarding coverage of code violations on weekends and evenings. There was a bit of a defense of what was happening in the department, which is fine, but I understood that already. And as I stated in the original motion, as comments to the original, I was just looking initially to have some way of just addressing some of these calls that might come in. And there is, in the second to last paragraph, basically does respond to that somewhat, in that they're going to have the answering system that they will respond to on Monday mornings. The only concern I have is that some people may be giving up on it if it's not clear that the system we responded to, or that they're calling basically into a department, and then may not know whose extension it is going to or who it should go to. So I originally asked that maybe there be some hotline number published, or that some specific number they can call, leave a message, and then could be responded to. I agree that some of the things that could occur on a weekend will be clear that they've happened on Monday morning, and it can be addressed then. So I do hope that something will be done.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councilor, I agree, and we're trying to find a way to do it, and at the same time, have it be productive use of staff time. And one of the things, as you pointed out, we are looking at the idea of a hotline, that particularly one that utilizing our new phone system that will be able to get some remote messaging back and forth and notified when there's a call, so that we would be able to potentially go out on an emergency call on during the weekends if need be. So.
Yeah, and as part of Lowell stat, I'm not sure if they're keeping track of any numbers as to how many calls or messages they have on a weekend. Maybe, again, once a hotline's established whose purpose is clear, it might be better to track calls left at that system, and then maybe half a year down the road, get an update, so maybe we get an understanding of, is there a need? Maybe there isn't, but just so we understand what kind of utilization it gets, and if there are a lot of complaints on the weekends or not.
That's a great idea, and we will follow up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lowry and then Councilor New.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, I put in a motion to have a sign for Mr. Bonin replaced on Humphrey Street. And I want to thank Assistant to the City Manager, Henry Marshan. I know I called Henry, and I think before we got the first report back, it was already up. So I want to say thank you, and I want to thank Mr. Moses for the information on the health insurance costs from last week. I did have a question, and that does explain quite a bit. And finally, I just want to talk a little bit. We get this book, the Massachusetts Municipal Performance Management Program, and I was new to the council before this actually came up. And we weren't one of the cities or towns highlighted in the end. But over the year I've been here, year and a half, I've seen the reports come through, the budget items, and the stat programs that we do have. And I just want to congratulate the administration on the job it's doing in regards of that program. Just reading, I wasn't familiar with it. I went through the booklet. It talks a little bit about how they come to their findings and so on. But I think the city's really done a great job since I've been here, getting the reports back from your administration. I think the administration deserves a lot of credit for this. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Councilor, for bringing that up. We're going to try to get some more information for the council. This is the final report, and as you know, the city of Lowell has been the lead community here in the Commonwealth for this effort through the state. And we're very pleased that we were able to play that and really become a model community for, along with several of our partner communities, to roll this out statewide. And and I appreciate the kind words. And
They do talk about Lowell quite a bit,
right.
Although it wasn't in the final findings of the three. And I just wanted to commend the administration for the job that they've done.
Thank you.
With the program. Thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mayor. Piggyback on what Councilor Mendoza with regard to the complaint of building and conservation code violations. And I know that you respond, you talk about hotline. In addition to that, if you could have maybe a staff on call who would check in the hotline to see if there's an urgent call or violation that staff can respond to, so that staff can assess the nature of the call, and maybe by working on weekend, you can compensate them as their work week. So certainly that certainly help go along the line of addressing what Councilor Mandang have spoke of. So.
Right. It has been an issue that we are aware that there are issues like that are taking place on the weekends. Mr. Bakey, did you want to comment on something related to this? But we agree that we have to look for some ways to deal with this.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, to some degree, that procedure is already in place. When a true emergency call does come in over the weekend, there's a arrangement that's been made so that the police and fire, who are staffed 24 hours and receive those true emergency calls, have the numbers to be able to contact both the building commissioner and the director of development services for matters related to under the jurisdiction of development services. And we have a procedure in place where the building commissioner will typically triage the situation on the phone and make a determination if it's the type of incident that requires an immediate response or if it's the type of incident that can wait until the next business morning. If it does require an immediate response, we have a system in place where they can actually arrange to send out. We have a hierarchy of the inspectors so that we treat them all equally in terms of getting the opportunity for the overtime. We allow, that gives us the ability to send out an inspector to address the issue if it is an emergency type issue that can't wait until the next business morning. The reason we typically do wait until the next business morning, if we can, is that it costs the city taxpayers essentially 4 hours of that person's time at time and a half rate under the union agreement to send someone out on an emergency call off hours or on the weekend. So if there's an emergency, that's well worth it. But if it's not an emergency, and if it is something that the full evidence of which will be available, whatever has happened, and can be dealt with just as effectively during working hours, obviously that's more cost effective for the taxpayer, and that's why we proceed on that basis. And with respect to the question of a hotline, at present, anyone can call at any time to the main number for development services, which is 978-674-4144. That there's a voicemail on that line, so if it's not staffed or if it's after hours or anything else, that message can come in. We can keep track of how many messages we receive, how many calls we receive in that way, and we can address it. What we're working with the MIS department on are two potential changes. One is to come up with a sort of more, frankly, catchier number that's easier to remember, easier to keep track of, and then which would then be advertised more broadly and made available. But also we're trying to figure out a way to utilize some of the technology that we have to be able to transmit messages that are not emergency calls per se, but that come in to someone who can evaluate them in much the same way that we evaluate the emergency calls now. And again, it's possible that some of them would require more immediate response, but we do have some procedures in place to address those situations, again, as cost effectively as we can.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before I forget, this is an old motion I brought up probably last year, and it was to name the fountain at Fort Hill Park for Annie Kavanaugh. And for those who don't know, Ann, she lived next to Fort Hill with her husband, Richard. For many years, she volunteered her time taking care of the park, the flower beds, mulching. I never knew Annie. I was the mailman over there, and I got to know her quick like everyone else. She was always volunteering at the park. But anyway, I'd put in a motion to name the fountain for her at Fort Hill, and the plaque is ready. And on May 4th at 10 a.m., we'll dedicate the fountain to Annie Kavanaugh. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the communications? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. We received a response to a motion that I filed on placing, or the possibility of placing meters in the taxi cab. And there's a number of items that it does address in here, but it doesn't really provide any solutions, Mr. Manager. There is an explanation, but I'd like to have this report forwarded to the Taxi Cab Commission so they can address some of the concerns that were brought forward a number of weeks ago, including overcharging or lack of posting of fees. I do understand after reading the report that there are no set rates per ordinance for taxi fares in the city, and I think there should be, which would prevent potential overcharging or different fares for different trips by different cab companies. So I think it's a good idea to forward this to the Taxi Cab Commission. We do have a member that brought these issues forward, and I think it makes sense to look at a number of these items. Including livery vehicles, livery vehicles, I'm sorry, I know that they're only supposed to pick up people from, predetermined pickup times, but I think we all know that that's not the case. And at times, you can see them at the Gallagher terminal, and they pick up multiple customers, and they charge each individual a fare. So, excuse me, I think it makes sense to send us to the Taxi Cab Commission.
Motion by Councilor Elliott to send to the Taxi and Livery Commission. So moved by Elliott, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Any further discussion on the communications? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have communication. The city manager requests approval of out-of-state travel, one for the Department of Planning and Development and one for the Lowell Police Department. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mercier.
Take the two requests up together and move approval.
Motion to take the two together and approve. So moved by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercier.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote, license agreement, sidewalk seating at 5 Merrimack Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title. Vote in City Council. Authorizing the city manager to execute a license agreement between the City of Lowell and Lax McGrupa, LLC, DBA Pizza and Sub Stop for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 5 Merrimack Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. What's the wish of the council? Motion
Move
to approve
approval.
by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion? Councilor Leahy.
Just one question, through you to the city manager. When I read this, you have to have a 4-foot clearance on, free of obstruction, I guess.
Correct.
Do we go around and double check that throughout the year?
We do. Particularly if we get a complaint. If we
But
definitely,
if we don't get a complaint, does someone, because
right.
we shouldn't really have to bring it up. I was hoping someone could just occasionally check on that.
We can do that. We can
All right, that'd be
occasionally
great.
send someone else to check on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercier.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote for a license agreement for Songo Curtis, DBA Eileen's Pizzeria and Grill, sidewalk seating at 127 Merrimack Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so vote. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to execute license agreement between the City of Lowell City and Songo Curtis, DBA Eileen's Pizzeria and Grill, for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 127 Merrimack Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. What's the wish of the council? Move for approval by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Noon. Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy.
I just have a question, a quick question.
Excuse me, Councilor
When
Laurie.
these new companies come into downtown or anywhere in the city, and we do send a license, do we send a letter thanking them for doing business in the city of Lowell? Is it custom? I mean, I think that would be a nice idea. Because when they pull out the license, and I'm thinking of it because the License Commission is coming up this week, and anyone who pulls a license with the city, to send a thank you letter to them for doing business within the city.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I know we obviously work with them through the Economic Development Office and Planning and Development, but we can look to do something like that.
Oh, that'd be great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
On that, I mean, it might be helpful to have something a little more than just a thank you, but, here are the resources
Correct.
that you have, and, we'd like to help if we can help, and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Lowry.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to transfer $125,000 to the Department of Public Works. Motion to waive the full reading by Counselor Noon, seconded by Counselor Lowry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title, in City Council vote. Order to transfer funds to the Department of Public Works to cover the costs of street lighting through June 30th, 2013, in the amount of $125,000. What's the wish of the council?
Move to
Counselor
approve.
Lowry. Move for approval by Counselor Lowry, seconded by Counselor Martin. Any discussion? Counselor Mendonça.
Through the mayor to the manager, obviously, we were having a significant amount of savings when we bought the streetlights, and even with this transfer, there's still savings. I'm just concerned about going forward, how much savings. Is this an anomaly, or are we going from, I think it was $300,000 a year, but are the rates such that maybe we can only expect $200,000 a year in savings? I mean, if you don't have the answer now, you can provide it later.
I think the savings, even after this transfer, are above 300,000. We had thought that it might be even more, and we set the budget before we really had any of these bills at the new tariff rate. But even after this transfer, the appropriation several years ago was above 800,000, and this would bring it to about 500,000. So we're still saving about 300,000.
That's, okay, that's good to hear. So we still have a significant savings, just we're being overly aggressive when we did the budget?
Correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Martin and then Counselor Leahy.
So, now, so as rates go up, that amount, that delta will decrease, right? I mean, if, so next year, or, rates usually don't go down for electricity, although I suppose they could. But as rates go up, we're going to erode into that savings amount every year. Or would the 800 have been going up too?
The 800 would have gone up as well.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
They have different rates that they set for municipally owned lights versus leased lights, which is what we were utilizing before. So this would be, so they all go up.
So we were still experiencing the impact of rate increases in the old system.
Correct.
It's really, so the savings here is take the maintenance, taking care of the repairs and that sort of
Takes
thing?
care of all of those things, correct?
All right.
Thank you. Counselor Leahy.
Thank you. With this transfer, does this include repairs? I noticed we had a crew on Central Street 2 Saturdays ago. They were fixing some wires to the street lights that were damaged through another contractor over the summer.
That's covered under a separate appropriation. This line item is just used for the energy itself.
Just for the energy?
And the contract that we have to maintain the streetlight itself, not the wiring, that's done under a different contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Lowry.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the general public hearings. We have an order of taking an acceptance of 14 Drive. Motion to waive the full reading by Counselor Mendonça, seconded by Counselor Lowry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or voted. Order of taking an acceptance of 14 Drive in City Council to take by eminent domain and fee certain parcels of land of the City of Lowell for municipal purposes, to wit, the layout and acceptance of 14 Drive and other municipal purposes associated therewith. I'd open it up at this point for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'll open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Actually, this would have to be held in the clerk's office for 7 days. Entertain a motion by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Lowry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a vote to transfer $150,000 for the sick leave incentive. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Martin, seconded by Counsel Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Reading by title, in City Council vote. Order to transfer funds of $150,000 to fund the sick buyback deficit. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Counsel Mercia, seconded by Counsel Laurie. Any discussion? Counsel Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, could you just give us an explanation on why there's a deficit in this account?
Excuse me, Counselor, could you repeat that question?
I just want to get an explanation for this transfer.
Okay. Essentially, in all of the contracts that we have in the city or that we've had in the city through the years, there's an agreement that when employees retire, they're entitled to a certain amount of buyback of unused sick time. This, of course, has been an issue I know that you've been concerned about, and other members of the council and the administration has been very concerned about this. And in fact, so we're contractually bound to pay this money, and that's why it's drawn down. We've had a greater number of payouts this year than we had anticipated, given retirements and separations that have happened. The good news, as I think everyone knows, is that the recent contracts that we've been settling with our employees is eliminating the sick time buyback for future employees, and in fact setting up a procedure to work down the liability we have with our current employees that are covered. So it puts a cap on what they can buy out, and then as they leave service with the city, this issue will disappear. It will take some time, but it will disappear, and our unfunded liability that sits on our books under GASB 34, I believe it is, will decrease as well.
So, Mr. Manager, could you just explain what you mean, that there's a deficit in this account because of the current buyback benefit to employees in exchange for the ability to gradually reduce our liability? What exactly does that provision mean that we're giving
Sure.
them?
Under the new negotiations that we've that have occurred where we've eliminated sick time buyback, we've allowed employees to buy back a certain portion each year, a limited amount, so that they can buy that down, and that buys down our liability long term. That was what the comment I was making in my previous description. So they were able to, if they're entitled to the $20,000 of buyback when they retire, they can actually start taking some of that $20,000 now. So when they leave, they would potentially get zero, but over the span of the next 4 years, they would eliminate that buyback possibility.
So how do we track that? How do we know? What if the employee gets another job, goes somewhere else, and if they're not entitled to the full, it's a $20,000 cap, correct?
Correct.
So is that tracked through the auditor's office, that when they leave, if they left beforehand, then they wouldn't be entitled to that?
Right, that would be tracked, and they would, again, they're wiping out that liability for us. I imagine there is the potential there that if someone leaves earlier to go somewhere else, but there's really a disincentive for that, because they would take their pension and take their retirement. I suppose the only opportunity that might exist is if someone leaves to take a position with another subdivision of the Commonwealth. It would be advantageous for them to do so. Without that, there wouldn't be any incentive for them to do that.
So what is the benefit to the city paying this out now? Why would we want to? I understand the liability issue, but I'm not sure What's
That's
the reason?
That's the biggest reason, is that it draws down our liability now as opposed to waiting to the end, and it's done in more of a planned fashion as opposed to large payouts of $20,000 or $30,000 all at one time when a group of employees leave. It was also a way that we could work with the unions to get them to agree to this provision of eliminating sick time buyback.
Right. And this is just for the city side. The school side, they do
That's
not
a
have...
separate, that's correct.
And then there's no cap on those employees, correct?
I believe that's
So
correct.
it's unlimited?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion? Yeah.
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Counsel Kennedy. Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendonça.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have under general petitions, one claim for property damage. I'd entertain a motion to refer to the law department for a report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under motions, we have the first motion of the night by Councilor Laurie. Request the License Commission consider a change to Section 4.02, dropping the last sentence after 11 p.m. All patrons are off the premises before closing time. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This really speaks for itself. In Section 4.02, it talks about the closing hours at the beginning, opening and closing hours of the establishments. But the last sentence, after 11 p.m., all patrons are off the premises before closing time. I found it to be very confusing. I brought it up last week during the meeting. I think other members of the council did. I've talked to some of the establishment owners. They look at it as at 11 o'clock they have to close, and that's not really the idea behind it. So my question is, can we just, as a council, send a recommendation that we drop that last sentence from that line? And thank you.
Councilman Mendonça.
I understood from last week's discussion what the intent was. And that is, if the closing time is prior to 11, the patrons might spend a little time thereafter. The closing time before they leave, for instance, a restaurant might close at 10, but there might still be people eating and partaking, in which case they would finish their meal and then leave. And the intent, I believe, of this is for establishments that are open after 11, that at closing time, the patrons have left. So I understand what the maker of the motion is intending to do, but I think the more appropriate would be that to have the request that the License Commission clarify the language so that it's clear what the intent is. I think you'd still want the premises empty when it's closing time at 2. So I'd like to amend the motion that it read that request that the License Commission clarify this language.
Motion to amend, seconded by Councilor Noon. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion as amended? Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering, since Councilor Kennedy isn't here, we're going to take up his motion on the same issue?
He may be coming later this meeting, so we're going to wait on that.
Okay, because I wanted to comment on that, and I figured if we were going to delay it to another week, I would have spoke on this motion, so I'll wait.
We'll wait to see whether he's coming. Councilor Elliott?
No, I was just I spoke with Council Kennedy. He is at his mother-in-law's wake, and he asked that this be delayed, hopefully, till 8 o'clock.
Oh, all right.
If we're still here.
If we're still here.
Right. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Laurie. Request the city manager ask the engineer's office for a report on the condition of Lowell's roads and a timetable and cost analysis to maintain or improve their current conditions. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I was up the engineer's office a couple of weeks ago, and I believe it's online, is the conditions of the roads in this city. And they're in tough shape, and we're going to spend X amount of dollars this year and get Chapter 90 money. My question is, we better off really looking at it in the whole picture. Right now, money is very cheap very inexpensive to borrow. And I think it would be good for debate. As we pay the bonds down that we have now, do we loan the money earlier while the rates are low to probably fix some more streets? I know we have a timetable this year, and I believe next year. But my fear is always the rates could rise. And I think it would be good for debate when we come into the open meetings, to have the report, for the council to have the report, look at it, and I think it would give us a better idea where we're going over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Council, we can certainly, we have a report that we use to determine the pavement. It's the report that you actually described. It's the Pavement Management Index, and we that helps us to figure out which roads to attack each year. This year, we're going to be spending close to we anticipate spending close to $4 million, which is in line with what our engineers have told us is suitable for maintaining our current conditions.
Right.
But you are correct, and I have been saying this for some time, and other members of the administration have been saying for some time, that we really need to put more money into our streets and sidewalks. And our plan is for next year to increase that number probably upwards of $6 or $7 million. I do anticipate, and obviously I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't speak regularly with the chairman of the Fed, but I anticipate that, in fact, I've never spoken with the chairman of the Fed, but I anticipate that interest rates will probably be in a similar spot next year. They may be a bit higher, but I certainly think that a more detailed presentation to the council would be advantageous. Clearly, as I said, I think we've said at another meeting, we can put more money into streets and sidewalks and buildings and all, and we think that there's a need for that, but it does come at a cost, and that cost is increased taxation in the out years. It wouldn't be this year coming up. It wouldn't be this year. It wouldn't be next year. It would be the subsequent years.
Well, that's why I'm asking for the motion. Next year, we're looking at really no tax increase, but after that, it's 2.5, 2.5. So the increases are down the line, and my idea is that $4 million this year is to maintain the level that we have now.
Correct.
And right now, it's poor. And I think the only way to increase the roads in this city is to really a paving program over the next 4 or 5 years. And I think really a more an extensive look at the roads, at the timetable, at the cost, and at what we can loan now. And as we pay down debt, which we're paying down now.
Correct.
And so we really wouldn't be building on more debt. We'd just be shifting it to another part of the infrastructure.
Well, you actually would be adding on more debt. We've already factored into our forecasts.
I mean, we will be adding on, but
Correct.
as we pay it down now, we'll just be carrying it
adding
forward.
it back in,
Right.
and then adding it in at a certain amount, and then if we go above that, then we'll be to add more money in for streets or facilities or whatever the case may be. We'd actually be ramping that up. So it would be a tax increase greater than 2.5%.
Possibly, and you just go around. I see the crews out there now. The sewers are falling in some of the cities.
Right.
They need work. So, long and short of it, I think having the full report in front of us will help for long-term planning.
And Mr. Mayor, I don't want it to be seen in any way that I'm disagreeing. I think we need to invest more money.
I know. We've talked about this in the past.
The only other point I want to make, just because you mentioned it, is our goal for next year. I just want to be clear. Our goal for next year has been to, again, keep it at a zero tax increase, similar to what we did this year. And last year, it was 1.5%. And again, that's well below what every other community, really, of the Commonwealth is doing. Or nearly every other community. We are having challenges. We have a report that we put together that I'll get to the council next week. We have concerns with the new House budget that came out that has a serious impact on our local aid picture that is going to make it very, very difficult to achieve that. But we'll have a more full presentation to the council on that.
And
next
another
week.
reason for that report, I know the report coming out of the State House isn't good.
Right.
And again, this just, I think, gives us more information for long-term long-term solution to the roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a report, which I guess for lack of a better term, I'd call the Tenza report. Is that where you talked the road management?
Correct. That was done back in the 90s, and I believe it was put on the shelf around about 2000, 2001. We pulled it off the shelf and updated it using the same engineering firm in 2007. Vanessa Hagen-Bruslin does that report for us, and they update it on an annual basis.
All right. So even though Councilor Tenza may have attempted to throw it out the window from where he sat over there, it didn't make it all the way out. We're still using it.
Correct.
Okay.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Through you, the manager, along with these, trying to fix the roads in the city, over in my neighborhood, Lou Street, it was paved a few years ago. The gas company has been over there twice, maybe 3 times, and dug it up, and the patches are all sinking. So along with trying to get these repairs done, we've got to make sure that the roads are still in good shape.
Correct.
After they dig them up. Now, the gas company was up there a couple of weeks ago. They made 3 pilot holes or whatever, and then they did some work. But the pilot holes weren't repaired. Now, we're at the end of the winter, but the water's getting in there. And then I've noticed, I don't know if other people have noticed, but maybe it's just because I'm really paying attention now, but the sewer manholes or the sewer covers seem to be, we repair so many of those a year, but I don't know if that seems like more are caving in on us, and what's the reason? There's one on Lou Street that's caving in now, and when we went up and we patched it, but now it's sinking in around it. So, what are we, by bidding laws, are we not getting the best contractors, or, are we?
Well,
we need to pay attention to the repairs,
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I don't know the circumstances of that particular catch basin. It's not unusual for I'm not sure when the street was repaved.
maybe 3-4 years ago or so.
Okay.
But
Oftentimes when we do the street repaving, you will go in and you'll rebuild the catch basins and the manholes. But there are other, circumstances that undermine those, and so we have to look and understand specifically what's happening in that particular case. And I'm sure they patched it with the expectation they'll have to go back and do further work later on. The gas companies are always a challenge. The utilities are always a challenge for us, but that's why we put a construction inspector on last year to help us with that process. The specific, we give them a certain amount of time to fill in anything like that so that there isn't deterioration, and to do the trenching properly. But again, it's a ongoing battle, not only here in the city of Lowell, but across the Commonwealth. Okay. But we'll follow up on that.
I know I'm not the first to speak about it, but I just want to make sure that we're on top of the repairs, because it's hard enough to get the money to do the roads, and then to start digging them up after we just paved them.
Right. And again, it's why we added a position last year, and frankly, even with that, we're still, the engineering office is still, in all likelihood, understaffed in terms of doing that type of follow-up work, but I agree.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That member for the engineering staff, when any company comes in and cuts open a street, they're supposed to leave it as good as they found it or better.
That's correct.
Now, I know a couple of years ago up on Fairmount and Belmont Street, I had called, it had to be 3-4 inches deep. I went over it in a motorcycle one night, nearly went down. A few nights later, I was out with a crew Christmas caroling, not that I can sing, I just follow along. But someone else nearly sprained their ankle, and I called the city the next morning. I know one other councilor did. I believe it was Councilor Marissa who may have been involved. And within a week or so, a couple of days, they were back out there leveling the surface, and that had to be a good 2-3 inches. So But is that what that position does now? They go out and
They follow up on that, and it's one of the reasons, I know that all the councilors received last year probably some correspondence or some emails from people regarding the gas company doing replacement work. A big part of that was the requirements that we place on the gas company and the utilities to do work in the streets. There was some objection to the standards that we were requiring, but Lisa DeMeo, our city engineer, is very firm on the work that needs to be done in order to maintain these streets and by people that cut the streets. But yes, that individual as well as other engineers too check on that. And when there is trench work, and I've seen in other communities where the gas company's gone in and done trenching to replace some mains, and there's about 2 inches down.
Right.
And I'm going to be watching to see if they go back and repave those sections now in those other communities. But I know here we will make them go back out and do that repair
That's
work.
good, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking about the conditions of particular streets, and I know that some years ago we did have a thick book of all the streets and the outline of the condition of each street, good condition, poor condition, fair. I did receive a call a couple of weeks ago from a gentleman out on Acropolis Road who was asking me if I knew where Acropolis Road would be, the status of where it sits, because last fall we accepted Acropolis Road as an accepted street, as Councilman Dontra and the rest of us really want to get that going, and we did one this evening so that Chapter 90 could be utilized there. So he was wondering, with the fact that it was an accepted street now since last fall, and it could be on the list somewhere, I'd just like to know the status of that. So in the meantime, if we're not going to repave it, could we send someone there to patch up the holes? It's in deplorable condition. So that's what I wanted to segue in with that, as well as the sidewalk in front of the Washington Savings Bank. There's a little portion of it that's very, very bad. As I stood out there on December 8th ringing the bell for the Salvation Army, a gentleman came to go into the bank, and he said that he had fallen and tripped over that sidewalk, and he hurt his knee pretty bad. He didn't file a claim, he wouldn't do that, but he said, when the spring comes, could you please, and it just reminded me that I should mention that. Thank you.
We'll have both of those checked out, and Acropolis, we'll see what the
Status
index number is and where that stands in
Thank you.
the overall
That's
scheme.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Motion by Councilor Mercier. Request the city manager instruct the Department of Public Works to reestablish the berm list and place 92 River Cliff Road on the list. Seconded by Councilman Donza. Councilor Mercier.
Sometimes even if you go in for a cup of coffee, you'll meet someone that'll tell you something about what's happening in the city, and I felt rather bad for this woman who told me that her berm was destroyed by the plow, but it was 3 years ago, she said. And she said she called for the last 3 years. I said, well, you should have called me 3 years ago. But the fact is, I know that there was a berm set up at one time, a berm list. And if they had like 9 or 10 people in the city, because they wouldn't just go out and fix a berm for one person, they would establish a list. And on that list, they would then, I don't know, would have a contractor go out and do all the 9 on a particular day. Are we still going to be doing such a thing like this?
There are 2 lists. One that we no longer maintain because it was funded through the Community Development Block Grant Program, and that was for new berms. Not that we don't do new berms, we do where there are drainage issues that need to be addressed. But we do maintain a list for berm repairs. And,
right, this is a repair.
Right, in this particular one, and so we do exactly as you described. We wait until we have a set number. We bring in a contractor to make it financially advantageous. This particular address was inspected, and they will be out there. They're scheduled to be out there either later this week or next week.
Okay, thank you.
And anyone else that has, to the public watching, if they have a repair needed, they can go on our website and file a request for service. They can contact manager's office or the DPW, or of course they can contact the city councilors, and we'll make sure that if there's damage to a berm, which does happen with the snow plows, that's inevitable, we do go out and repair those.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Nguyen. Request the mayor prepare a resolution to support comprehensive immigration reform. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Nguyen.
Mr. Mayor, we have a few speakers registered to speak, and I can speak after.
Mr. Clerk.
Jeffrey Feldman.
Honestly, I haven't paid the clerk to call me first, this time or last. I'd just like to speak to you about immigration, which is something that does matter to me. Recently, I learned that 1907, in the spring of 1907, 11,747 people were processed in a single day through Ellis Island. Every single person that was admitted on that day achieved something equivalent to our permanent resident status today. We've sunk a long way from that great day, where probably everybody in this room, or many of us in this room, had family who came through during that period. My grandmother came through at that time. I grew up in New York City, which is a city of immigrants, and what I love about Lowell is that it's a nice, manageable sized city, but it has all that wonderful variety. So I really think that, for once, I think the city does a wonderful job at this. And this is, we have profited from immigration, we have enjoyed it, we have our variety and wonderful restaurants, our cultural life, we're known for it. So I'm hoping, and I'm almost assuming, that you'll vote for this resolution. I also want to add that, of course, the resolution is really not entirely within our jurisdiction of the government here. So I would also like to add that I think that the City Council could be more proactive about the current wave of immigrants that we have, who are mostly from the Middle East. My intellectual interests have led me to get to know them. They're wonderful people. I'm excited about their future here. Our high school is outstanding, really, in the work that it does with people who come from, and you've probably heard of Rafael Thaher, who was in the Lowell Sun. This is a woman, a young lady, who came from the most dreadful circumstances, and she's a functioning adult now, and we can all take credit for that, for our school. A lot of other cities, I don't think, would have done as nice a job with her and others who are like her. But we also need to be proactive. The events of the past week, I think, show that this is a particular population that not only left dreadful circumstances in their own country, but because of the horrible misconduct of persons who happen to claim their faith, and I don't even think legitimately that they have the same faith. These people are living in a state of discomfort. I'm not sure what we can do as a government, but I'd like to propose and suggest that you give it some thought and maybe think of a resolution. There was an incident this spring, which I think was badly handled in the school, in which somebody called in a bomb threat about a particular young child, which was absolutely baseless. I don't think the school handled it as well as they could have. I don't think there was malice. I think there was just not quite having thought through the circumstances of that. So I can talk with anybody privately who's interested in that. But I just think perhaps there may be a way that we can be more proactive to continue our tradition of welcoming immigrants with this particular wave that's coming in from the Middle East. And I think, just from my studies, I'm expecting people from Western Africa probably within a year or so too, because of what's going on there. So there is, I think, within the framework of that resolution that's before you tonight, I do also think that there is room for something proactive. I'm not enough of a politician, believe it or not, to actually know what it is, but give it some thought. Thank you.
Ryan Barad.
Good evening. Ryan Barad, 288 10th Street. It's nice to see so many familiar faces tonight. Thank you to Councilor Noon, first of all, for presenting this motion, which comes to you through him by way of a coalition of labor unions, such as SEIU Local 509, which I represent, but also including a large number and a great variety of community groups and immigrant groups that have come together at a time when there is an obvious need and an obvious desire to help to improve our broken immigration system. I think everyone in the room can agree, for whatever your particular reason is, we need to do something to fix the fractured immigration system that we currently have. And also, and this is our top priority, make sure that we can bring the 11 million people who are already here out of the shadows and give them the opportunity to live the American life that they have desired. Doing that on an earned path to citizenship, which the legislation that has currently been drawn up by a bipartisan group of senators and hopefully will be presented soon before the Senate, talks about. It talks about people who are already here, who have been here for a long time and who are contributing to our society, becoming American citizens after a period of waiting time, after paying significant fines to acknowledge the fact that they have broken current existing law, and then being able to integrate through programs that are established in that legislation with help from the government, from different community organizations, to becoming full-fledged citizens of the United States. In addition to that priority, we're also hoping, and we're hopeful based on the legislation that's been drawn up, that I think the biggest thing that draws my attention and a lot of people to immigration reform is the 4.3 million people who are currently in what's referred to as the backlog for family visas. Today, I had a good opportunity, something I enjoy doing, to go see my mother, to see my father, and for them to hug me and wish me a happy birthday. Today is my birthday. But 4.3 million people, whether they be the children of parents who are here as naturalized citizens, or people who are holding green cards, or the parents of those people who are already here, don't have that opportunity. Some of them haven't been able to celebrate a birthday together for 10 years, celebrate a holiday, or Mother's Day that's coming up. The best they can hope for is maybe a call every 6 months. So that legislation also eliminates that backlog and creates a family visa system that's more fluid and that allows for people to request those visas quicker so that there isn't a decade-long waiting period. We also believe that the legislation at the federal level will make a big difference in terms of the economic situation, not of just immigrants, but also of American workers, raising wages for the immigrant workers, but also for people across the board, and generally helping the economy in the United States in any number of ways, as you might imagine. So tonight, I hope that Lowell will become the second city of 12 cities that we, as a coalition, have presented this resolution to support, with your collective voices and the voices of the citizens that you represent, that comprehensive immigration reform legislation that's currently in the works at the Senate level, and the hope that those 12 cities, then the legislature of Massachusetts and the governor, congressional representatives, and the House and Senate representatives here in the Bay State will vote in favor of that legislation when it comes before them in the House and the Senate. So again, thank you to Councilor Noon for presenting this, and thank you all for giving me the time to hopefully inform you a little bit more about the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's time that we, walk the talk, because I know that, since being on the council and even before that, we speak of this is a city of immigrants. We celebrate that diversity. We enrich it by this diversity. And now even politicians who really not before adopt or want to advocate for it now start to talk about it. because the change is here, and that it's important that we look to, help all of our citizens to have access to what we all do have. I believe that in supporting of this comprehensive immigration reform is the right things to do. I understand that the process from here is that our city solicitor is going to draft that language and will come back to this council for vote of approval or denied it. But I do hope that my fellow councilor see it the way I do, that because we are a city of immigrants, because we talk about the richness of culture and ethnicities, and that we do something about it. So I thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilman Dodson.
I would agree that the system is broken at this time and that it needs some reform. And again, I'm all in support of it. The only caveat being that I want to make sure that those that are labeled illegal immigrants now have no advantage over those that have followed the law in the immigration process. And it sounds like this comprehensive immigration reform is going to address that, to make sure that those that have been waiting have a chance to be reunited with family members, especially prior to any benefit being given to those that arrived here or stayed here illegally. But down the road, we need to address them as well. We need to identify them, and we certainly need to give them the path, again, so long as there's no advantage to it over those that have followed the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not so sure this is, a wise course for us to pursue. It's, a few years back, we had a similar request that we adopt a position on the Patriot Act, whether it should be renewed or not. And I did not support that then, primarily because this is not our role. We've heard already two slightly different versions of what councilors would support, and I think if we get into the details of this proposal, we'd have potentially 9 different views. We're not negotiating an immigration reform bill here. It's not what we do. We have an immigration reform is something that's eluded Congress now close to 25 years. They've got 8 senators supposedly locked in a room who've got some proposal that we haven't seen yet. We have no idea how the other 92 senators are going to react to that, nor how members of the House are going to react, and whether there's even any realistic hope of this becoming legislation. But I think what the Lowell City Council has to say about this legislation is not going to matter one bit, whether it succeeds or not. So that's one reason that's sort of beyond the scope of what we do. It also, if it's something that's divided the Congress and divided the country for this long, it's likely to have that same effect here. There's no shortage of division and disagreement in this chamber, and I'm reluctant to have us start taking positions on issues that we can't affect the outcome of in any event. So, if the thing's going to come back for review, I'm happy to see what it says, but I think if it's going to get anywhere near unanimous support, it's going to be so innocuous and watered down as to be meaningless. So, I don't like things that require us to take positions on federal issues that are beyond our reach, and I kind of feel that way about this one too. So that's my views.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Council Martin. I do think everybody in the city, or certainly on the council, would agree that we do need immigration reform. But the details of exactly what we think that reform is individually or collectively might differ. And so I'm also reluctant. I mean, it's, we could also put resolutions on supporting gun control. What exactly does that mean? Do we all believe that we should have more strict or less strict or more regulation on gun control? Perhaps, but to what degree? So I understand the resolution. I understand the intent of the resolution. I do think it makes some sense that we all agree we have to do something, but to what degree and to what extent can we have an impact, and what does it mean to each one individually is unclear here. So I'm reluctant to support a resolution that's going to say to support something when we don't know exactly what we're supporting.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion itself only calls to prepare a resolution. Now, I brought a couple before the council, but usually I have them in the packet the prior week for everyone to look at. I guess if you want to try to change the motion to prepare a resolution to bring back to the council, and then they would vote on that resolution. But, and I can see why some of the other councilors are very skeptical. They don't have it in front of them. They can't read it. They can't see it, so we don't know what's coming back. But the motion itself just calls to prepare a resolution to support comprehensive immigration. So I would suggest, if we do pass it, the resolution gets prepared and then it's brought before the council for a vote. And that way it would be an up and down vote.
Any further discussion? Councilor Noon.
Isn't that what it's supposed to be? And is that is the motion. The motion is to prepare a resolution, and of course, it's going to the city solicitor, and the city solicitor that will put that together and having us vote on the language. And if the language in there we disagree or don't like, we can, speak to that, why we disagree and why we agree to, and then, get rid of it or add something to it. Thank you.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the surface, it sounds wonderful, but I don't vote on anything that I don't see, and that's not what this motion is calling for. It's calling for to prepare a resolution. So I'm asking, how is the solicitor going to prepare this resolution? Are we going to read like 780 pages of like the Patriots Act? How big is this document? I don't know. I mean, the solicitor can prepare a resolution and we all can vote on it up or down, but where's the actual resolution of the laws or the change or the reform that we're going to talk about? I have to read what I'm going to vote for. You could prepare a resolution to say that tomorrow's going to be a wonderful day and we all support that, but unless I see the weather forecast, I don't really know what's going on here. So where's the resolution? I mean, where's the document that supports the resolution that you're going to prepare? That's what I want to know. Where is this thing that I'm going to see that I support this resolution or not? So,
Councilor Noon, to the maker of the motion.
I can work with the speakers on that, and then I can work with the city solicitor, and then come back with that resolutions. I can sit down with the city solicitor and put that together.
what is the main gist of this resolution that you're concerned about, that it says that you support? What is it that you support on this reform?
Well, Councilor Martin spoke of already with regard to a number of senators in locker room discussing the reform, whether that be past citizens and all the other things. I don't have the detail of it, but I'd be happy to work with you and or any council and or city solicitor on that matters. And again, just a just on our part, yes, probably doesn't matter what we say to the congressmen and congresswomen and or the senators, but at least we as a city acknowledge, not just saying that, yes, we do celebrate diversity. Yes, we are a city of immigrants. We are not talking about, I don't know, at the end of the day, we probably talk about the same language. That language is that I don't think any of us here support illegal immigrants. I don't. But it's got to be some way we work on issues, the system that's broken, has been broken.
So are we asking to
Councilor
create thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we asking for the city solicitor to present a resolution whereby the council is asking our senators and Congress people to establish reform, or?
No, that's not what I'm saying, Council. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
If I could move this discussion along, one of the speakers referenced a model resolution that's been made to 12 other communities, or this is one of the 12. So maybe perhaps that is the template that will be used and passed on to the city solicitor, which will then be brought back later next week if this motion passes. Councilor Noon?
I didn't really hear what the speaker spoke of, the sample. Is there a sample resolution? You do have that. Maybe, yes.
So the speaker, yourself, can work with the law department to incorporate that into a resolution that's brought back to the city council if we have a vote on this motion.
If we do, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott?
I'd like to make a motion to lay this on the table until we get additional information, either in a resolution or the bill that is, or that will come before the Senate.
Motion to lay on the table? Seconded by Councilor Mercia.
Just need more information.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
We just need more information on it.
Next motion by Councilor Noon. Request the city manager provide assistance to Nader for 3K road race to raise funds for the victims of the Boston Marathon bombings. Seconded by Councilman Donson. Councilor Noon.
Mr. Mayor, there is a speaker, Nate is here to speak on these motions, and I'll let him. Sure.
Nader.
How you guys doing?
If you please state your full name and address for the record.
My full name is Nader. I'm from 36 Gardner Ave. I'm a senior at UMass Lowell, and I'm here to talk to you guys about a fundraiser idea to help support the Boston Marathon victims. And the idea I came up with is on Sunday, May 5th, to hold a 5K road race. Those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, a 5K road race is roughly 3 miles. And I would need some assistance because I'm unfortunately just a college kid with no funds. And all the money we raise will go straight to help all the victims. And we would sell shirts, 50-50 raffles. Nothing too big, something small, but something small could go a long way. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
We can, if you could just at some point contact my office, we'll work with you through our special events office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
I'm wondering if Mr. Nader knows of the effort that's underway with the city council.
Sure. A number of city councilors and school committee members and members of the community, some professional boxers as well as some Olympian runners, have been putting together a fundraiser for this Saturday at 6 p.m. At the Inn and Conference Center. And there'll be a number of people there, I think, at 6 p.m. So it's welcome. Everything's open to the public. You're welcome to come there, but certainly the manager's office can work with you on that specific fundraiser. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm aware of another group that's contacted myself and Mr. Marchand trying to put together a similar type of race or, demonstration of physical fitness as a fundraiser. So I'm sure we're going to have, there are a lot of well-intentioned requests out there, and people certainly want to do what they can to help. So I think it's a good idea for the manager's office through special events, try to, assist and coordinate some of these things where we can. And I know you've been doing that already, and so we can add this to that mix.
Thank you. Councilor Noon?
I believe the motion came about along the same time as you, Mr. Mayor, and your brothers invite all the council and school committee and all the other to host a fundraiser benefit for the Lowell victim of Boston Marathon bombing. Nate emailed me about the road race. He's probably thinking of doing something along the line of running. So I do commend him for have this thought, and that I hope that everyone who's watching join in on him the benefit. This is a great benefit. I believe he's probably plans to do sometime, not this Saturday, but the weekend after this weekend. So surely he can attend your event and all the council event, and in addition having another 3K run with the help of the manager.
I just want to clarify too, it's a 5K, just in case people are training for the 3K and then discover on the day that they got to do 2 extra.
3 to 5, you can get off at 3K.
Sure. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Councilor Noon, request the city manager have proper department check the city tree located at 52 New Spalding Road. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Noon.
This homeowner have contacted me, spoke to me and indicated to me that he have been, speaking to somebody from the city about a city tree in front of his house at this address that damaging his sewer line, and that he wanted to see if staff from the city or the DPW or somebody can take a look and assist him. That's why I put this motion on.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Councilor Kennedy will delay until he arrives. So the following motion is motion by Councilor Elliott. Request the city manager provide update on holdover appointments and vacancy of the Lowell Memorial Auditorium Trustee Board. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, on another appointment, I started to express my concerns, so I want to follow up with this motion. Mr. Manager, and I see there was nothing on the agenda this week, at least on the 2 holdover appointments. I have expressed my concerns in those 2 individuals. They have, terms are put in place for a number of reasons, one being performance, and as when they do their job, should they be reappointed, and at the end of a term, if it expires, that decision is made. So again, it's been 2 years. I really don't like, I don't like the fact that this has been politicized, especially in light of, and we have had contracts in the past, but this is a very important contract. It's a very important venue for the city. It hosts so many community events, as well as being a vital part of the downtown. But also, more importantly, is the appointment of the Lowell Memorial Auditorium Board of Trustees, the veteran representative. I understand Mr. Cludier, I know him well, and he's ill, but that appointment expired, or he submitted his resignation quite some time ago, and it hasn't been filled. My concern, Mr. Manager, is that names were submitted to you in the past, 3 names, And those are names submitted by the Veterans Council. It's their choice, it's their appointment, and the council was put together to have all the veterans groups come together, and one of their functions certainly is to provide an appointment to this board. And now you're asking for additional names. 3 names were submitted to you. You selected one of the 3. So I don't understand why you're asking, you trusted one of those 3 names in the past, and I don't understand why that's not taking place. That's not taking place now. I know Mr. McDonald is a veteran. He was one of the names. Mr. LaFeria was another name. I think they're both well-respected, and they're veterans, and they're well-respected in the community, and I think they're very good choices. Yeah, I understand Mr. McDonald has a position of strong mayor, and I'm not sure if that's the reason why but what is concerned is they have a process too. These people were brought forward by that council, and they were elected. There was an election at that council. So I think those individuals should be considered, and I don't understand why now we're going back out for, or you're looking for other names. So those are my concerns. That's why I brought it forward. And we've had many, you brought many appointments forward in the last couple of months of equal importance, and so I can't understand why these are being held, why they're being held up. So, and again, this should be this board should have a full complement of its members with standing, and I would like to see that done as soon as possible, or immediately.
Mr. Manager?
Be happy to provide an update to the council if so voted.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Elliott.
Could I have can I have that update now, Mr. Manager? I don't think there's anything that requires a report.
Yeah, actually, the council hasn't voted on the motion.
Mr. Manager, isn't this an important contract coming up? It's been negotiated for, well, coming on months now. And to have 2 members that are in holdover status, they're not being appointed. It doesn't make sense to me. It's, we have a veterans appointment and I don't want to be redundant, but they gave you names. And those are the names that came from their organization, and I think they should be respected. So to just, throw them out and then go back and say, hey, give me 3 more names, is not the right approach. So I would like I don't need a report. I would like an explanation as to why there has been such a delay, why you're waiting to bring these forward. And I can tell you in the last couple of months, we've had appointments from the Board of Trustees, library, resignation and appointment in the same night. We've had 2 taxi cab commission appointments since first week of March. I know that I brought forward Commission on Disability appointments. We've had 2 animal advisory appointments in the last, I'll say 2 months. And the list goes on, and we should be making those appointments. Hunger Homeless, we've had 2 Lowell Housing Authority appointments. Immigration Commission, we just had the Board of Parks. So as important as the board, I think the Lowell Memorial Auditorium is just as important and deserves the attention that the other boards do.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I was just to get this, are we going to call for a vote, or just to get this going?
Any Councilor Laurie?
Just a quick question. It came to my attention this week, and only because you were the town manager at Chelmsford, that the town didn't have a layover status on boards. And my first response was like their planning board is voted in. The towns are a little bit different. And a lot of their major boards, housing authority, planning, they're done by voters. But I thought it was curious that Chelmsford didn't have layovers.
Holdover status?
Holdovers, yeah.
Actually, they do have holdover status. The planning board, housing authority, sewer commission, library trustees are all directly elected, but
Right.
the other positions, and it's been almost 7 years since I've been there, and my memory is starting to slip a bit, but I believe those do have holdover status.
They do?
Yes.
Yeah, it was just something I heard this week, and I said, geez, I was curious, but I knew their major boards were elected officials.
It's been traditional here in the city of Lowell to have the holdover status, and people sit in a holdover status while we deal with a number of other issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Elliott?
I did ask the manager for an answer tonight. I don't think that's unreasonable, unless he thinks this motion is going to fail, which I think it's highly unlikely, but Council Mercy has filed motions on this, Council Kennedy has filed motion on this, I have filed motion on this, and I think the manager's just ignoring the council on this issue. This is not a strong mayor form of government, and I think these appointments should be brought forward immediately.
Well, he is correct in that the motion has not been voted on yet, and he's not obligated to respond to the motion until it has. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Councilor Mendonça. Request the city manager develop a use for the city-owned parcel at 16 Hampshire Street. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, this is a parcel adjoining a park in Centerville. It was once the water department building and hasn't been for many years. It was, this parcel is actually listed in response to Councilor Noon's motion that we received last week. And one of the comments on there is that the neighborhood has generally opposed reuse as housing, which means that since it's zoned traditional multifamily, I don't see what other use there could be. And so I brought this motion forward because as I continue to go to neighborhood meetings in Centerville, oftentimes this comes up in the police reports. It's labeled in GIS mapping as Monsignor Keenan Park. It's often referred to also as Eagle Park, from those that knew it from years ago, I guess. In any case, it's a blight on the neighborhood, this particular building. And I think that it's much like the Butler School was out on Gorham Street. I have heard that it's labeled as a historic building, I'm not sure. But even if it was, it's almost being demolished by neglect, as they often refer to it. It's often being broken into, or holes being created in the walls, and there is illicit activity that goes on around this parcel. I think this would be a much better park. Personally, I would recommend that we just raise the building and create additional green space for the park, or enlarge the parking, which I believe there's sufficient there now. But that would open up that area for other neighbors to see what's going on and not leave any places where illicit activity could go on. So that would be my recommendation, but I leave it up to the manager and the administration to come up with something to develop the site for better use. And again, park use would be fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion is mine. If Councilman Mendonça would please take the chair. Councilman Mendonça, if you please. Thank you.
And next motion by Mayor Murphy. request manager develop comprehensive walkway improvement plan to address sidewalk, crosswalk, street tree needs with a priority given to areas around schools, neighborhood business districts, and concurrent street improvements, and incorporate into the overall capital plan. Also requests efforts to maintain walkability of infrastructure through enforcement, targeted if necessary, to school and business district areas of current city ordinance. Second by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Walkability was one of the central points in the spec plan, and most importantly, I think, in our own master plan, and I think it ought to be a key element too in our capital plan. I think we've had a lot of discussion about street improvements, the paving management index, and I think that's done really in a more concerted fashion because we do receive the Chapter 90 reimbursement from the state. And so it's tended to be more haphazard, probably, the investment that we make in our sidewalks and crosswalks in general of making the city more walkable. I would suggest that we need to make a greater investment, but also make it in a coordinated way. And I understand that the initial plan or book that may have been put together back in 2000 probably required a significant initial effort, and that's why I've laid out a couple of the priorities to be given around, in particular, schools, neighborhood business districts, places where you would most benefit from having easily walkable areas. And as I say, to keep in mind the entire street design, and not just sidewalks, but street trees and the like. The second part of the motion is really to make sure that investment is maintained. Throughout the neighborhood, you'll find that our ordinances for parking aren't necessarily adhered to in a coordinated way. You'll find cars parked on the street where they don't necessarily need to be. There's enough space on street to be able to both park and use a sidewalk. But that, of course, impedes people walking, people in strollers, people in wheelchairs. The other part, I think, of enforcement comes during the wintertime. You find that a number of people don't necessarily shovel out. In fact, some of the bigger stretches of sidewalks are by the state. And finding a way to, for instance, on Gorham Street towards the LRTA, to find ways to ensure that those snow shoveling ordinances are also adhered to, and that we're doing more enforcement, particularly in the areas around schools, around neighborhood business districts, where you want to preserve the walkability of that infrastructure.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I think this is a good motion. I do have one question, actually two. One about lighting, if we could get increased lighting in these areas. If you're going to make the sidewalks more walkable, and I think that's a great idea. If you go down to Jackson Street now, and the newer sections, and once we're done over here on the boulevard, I think you're going to see a huge improvement. But I think lighting's important. And the other thing, if we could, and it's really kind of new to, would be Lowell and Old City, the lamp post. We always have them on the corner near the street. And when you watch them trying to clear out downtown with the little bulldozers and things like that, the biggest impediment is streetlights. And I'm wondering if we could do a study of, as we go forward with these ideas, to move them back towards the property line a bit. And I think when the city, especially near the schools, in the business districts, when you're trying to clear out that sidewalk, you don't have the street lamp on the corner. And I don't know if we could do a study on that, but I think lighting would be important. And again, if we could move the street lights back in the newer areas, I think just for maintenance, as the mayor is saying, in the wintertime, it might make it a little bit easier to keep them clean. It's only a guess. I don't know how the maker of the motion feels, but I think it's a great idea.
Mayor Murphy?
Certainly, I think that anything to address it in a comprehensive way that improves the walkability both during the day and night is welcomed.
Anyway, Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. On the motion, it's a good motion, and the second part of the motion, as the maker said, that's the hardest part, is keeping up the maintenance of this, and supporting it over the years. Because, some of the main roads, we don't get out and enforce that shoveling during the winter. And a lot of it is business. And that's what we have to hold them more accountable, I think, than the homeowner. I think it's easy to get the businesses to keep their sidewalks shoveled versus the homeowners on the side streets. But it's a great motion, and we should work on this and really try to sustain it over the years. Thank you.
Councilor Mercer?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Walkability is a good aspect in a city to try to, conserve energy and get out of your cars and walk and enjoy your health and increase that. That's fine, but we do need that partnership to continue. We can do everything we can, but we have to not forget a certain component. For example, when you say walking from Gorham Street or whatever, there's certain sections along the way where the whole strip of lighting is out. I talk about Gallagher Square, the reconfiguration of all that road work, and yet the lights still aren't on. I made a motion some time ago about Gorham Street in front of two buildings of housing at the Bishop Markham. Those lightings aren't fixed because of, wiring in the ground or whatever. People can walk all they want and have a good atmosphere about it, but you have to provide the safety factor too, and that's the part that I wanted to bring in. So lighting added to this is a very good component. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. There is one more motion if the mayor will resume the chair.
Perfect timing.
Thank you. Last motion of the night we have by Councilor Kennedy. Request the City Council request the License Commission to amend their proposed rules by deleting sections 2.02 and 2.03 of Section 2 of the General Conditions and consider adding them to special conditions in Section 3.01. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank everybody for putting this motion at the end of the agenda. At least I think that's what went on here. I'm not sure because I just came in. Anyways, basically what this motion does in a nutshell is to take section 2.02 and 2.03 out of section 2, which are under general conditions, and move it to special conditions in section 3.01, or at least asks for that the License Commission do that. The members of the City Council recall that last year when this issue first came up and we came up with the proposed amendments and we had the police chief involved and so forth, that there were general conditions and there were special conditions. I think that since that time, there's been 2 or 3 different versions of the proposed amendments, and so I would just think that this is important. I don't think that we should be imposing any hardships on eating and drinking establishments that are well managed and that operate without any problems. And so, rather than to impose those conditions, 2.02 and 2.03 on everybody, let's make it be that the License Commission can impose those as needed. And just so that everybody understands, Section 2.02 and 2.03 have to do with not letting anybody into bars after 1 o'clock and with stopping entertainment 45 minutes before. So it doesn't take those away, it just makes some special conditions, which is what they were in the first place. It's my understanding that the License Commission does not want to have a waiver feature involved in what's proposed for Thursday night for the public hearing. And I just think that the decision on this is not up to the City Council, it's up to the License Commission, but they are having a public hearing, and I think that when they make their decision after the public hearing, they should do so without resting at all on the incorrect notion that what they're voting on was approved by the City Council, because I think that's not the case, and that this is a different version that is different from the version that the City Council supported last year.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to say that I do support Councilor Kennedy's motion wholeheartedly, and for the record, we have a Commissioner Cliff Krieger up there in the balcony, so I'm actually directing this to you, Mr. Commissioner, my comments here. In this world, we realize that society functions properly when there are rules in place. So in essence, we know we need rules. In this particular instance, the License Commission members are reestablishing rules, are shoring them up in the wake of incidents that have taken place last year. I realize that they, the License Commission, have the final say, and whatever is said here can go by the wayside, but to say nothing would not be what this council is all about. And I truly hope that the commissioners take what we say into consideration and carefully weigh our options. I suppose I could have attended a previous rules change hearing, but I was waiting for the final draft to see what their intentions were. I was hoping that the draft rules would outline what to expect for individual bars and clubs that cannot control their establishments. Then the rules would state that if you cannot manage the crowd or you violate the rules, we will limit your hours of operation, place restrictions, make modifications such as the following, as would be stated. I don't think that everyone would be punished for this, should be punished for the sake of a few. But the rules that I see as amended are aimed at targeting a whole body of businesses that were not even in violation of any previous rules. What is being done here is setting a policy and implementing change to people whose establishment didn't do anything wrong. At the very least, I feel we should be fair. For the record, I want to state that I do not see fairness here. As stated in Councilor Kennedy, I don't see fairness there. When people know the rules and break the law, that is what you face should you do wrong. Now that's fair because you're warning them. But what I see here is punishment to everyone. What should be happening here are rules put in place and conditions established for those who would violate any laws. This would give notice to all business owners that this policy is in place and will be what you can expect to happen to you if you violate the rules. And so that's specifically what I see here. I mean, we're trying, it's not an easy task what they have in front of them, but I see it as rules that are being placed that punish people that didn't do anything wrong. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. And a good point that Councilor Kennedy did make is after the public hearing, you should step back again and go over your rules and try to work some changes in modifications here, special that section that Councilor Kennedy talked about, instead of just having the public hearing and voting to adopt the draft, because I think it should be looked at again. But again, I'm telling you, we don't have a right to tell you what to do, but I just hope that you would take into consideration things that we're saying here. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just say I support the motion. You know, these regulations have been a long time coming, and I appreciate the effort that the License Commission has put into them. I don't think I think the License Commission has considered the views of the City Council. It's what prompted this whole set of regulations in the first place, initiated, I think, with a discussion between us and Chief LaValle many months ago, and I would have thought it wouldn't take this long, but there's been turnover, there have been other issues. I think all we've ever wanted, at least I'll speak for myself, all I've ever really wanted from the License Commission is to exercise its discretion to, you know, come down on those places that were causing problems, particularly late at night downtown. And there seemed to be some resistance to that in the beginning. I think there was some friction, obviously. Some people in the License Commission thought the police were complaining about the License Commission without having brought proper cases to the License Commission for disciplinary action. But whatever all the reasons for inaction were back then, I think this group has shown a concerted effort to take action. We've seen in recent weeks some pretty significant disciplinary actions imposed on bars that have been causing problems, and I think that's refreshing. I think that's what we expect the License Commission to do. And I think, you know, these regulations are not going to be the end-all and be-all, but certainly a statement from the License Commission of at least a base standard of conduct for people that own liquor establishments. So I do think our views have been considered, at least certainly fairly recently they've been considered. I did attend one of the hearings when the regulations ended up not being voted on. They died for lack of a second, and I did, you know, hear everybody out. There were a number of club owners there that night, sat and listened to all of them. Some, and they had valid concerns. Others I thought were not concerns that I considered to be particularly valid. But the License Commission took up the effort again. So I think they do take their work seriously. I fully agree that this is within their purview, but I think they have considered from the beginning of all this, you know, percolation and controversy in the downtown, they have considered the council's view, and so I'm optimistic. I think that the License Commission will continue to consider the council's view, as well as, and it's not an easy job to balance the interests of industry versus the interest of residents. The non-liquor serving businesses all have a stake. We all have a stake in the downtown, and we want it to be, I guess, safe and friendly and not riotous at closing time. And I think the License Commission's taken some very positive steps to try and address that. I don't think all the problems we have been adequately addressed, but I think we're well on our way. And I appreciate the efforts for the License Commission in that regard. But I do think these issues are worthy of consideration. They could have serious impact on places that really just haven't been a problem for the whole time they've existed.
Thank you. Madam Solicitor.
Thank you. I was just going to add in just a couple of points. The special conditions were designed really just to do just that, to really be aimed at those establishments who the commission may find are violating their rules as a whole, and carve out for themselves an ability to put truly special conditions on those license holders. Councilor Martin had mentioned that there has been, it appears, sort of increased disciplinary action with this new board, and that seems to be the case. And in fact, License Commission has already utilized a special conditions sort of punishment on one establishment that came before them. And should these rules be adopted, the special conditions will in fact do just that, and that's what they're aimed at doing, targeting those that aren't complying. Also, it should be noted that not only will they be reviewing and perhaps modifying the rules as it goes through a public hearing process, and they have an opportunity to listen to members of the public, both from neighborhood groups and establishments alike, but the commission had passed a motion by Commissioner Krieger to do an eight-month review after these rules are implemented. So if there are problems once they're implemented, the commission is willing to take a look at it and take action if action's appropriate. The other thing that should be noted is that it may be during the course of the public hearing that there are in fact modifications. As far as the two sections that Councilor Kennedy had raised a concern with, and those have certainly been a concern as we've gone through this process. It may be that there's even some sort of a compromise reached. I mean, one of the things that the commission may end up taking into account is that there is now going to be codified a, quote, last call at 11:30. I mean, at rather 1:30. So at 1:30, there may not be a need for people entering the establishment if the sales is actually going to end. With respect to the entertainment, that also may be modified after hearing from the public, although the way that was designed and the intent behind it was to at least have some sort of a wind-down period. It may be that 45 minutes proves to be too difficult on establishments, but regardless, the intent was to begin to have some wind-down period as recommended by the police department so that music or entertainment wouldn't end right at 2 o'clock and then expect to begin to empty the establishments.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to support the motion tonight by Councilor Kennedy. And I also plan to attend the meeting Thursday night and speak as, we don't speak as councilors, but sign and speak before the commission. But I think we have to step back, and there's a lot that's changed since the meetings last year. We have a new police chief, interim chief. We have a new head of the commission. We have 2 new commissioners. As Councilor Martin has said, and the city solicitor, some of the penalties now are becoming more severe. So I think we really have to sit back and take a deep breath here. There's a lot that has changed in the past year. Will I be going Thursday? Yes, I will be going Thursday and speaking as Marty Laurie. And there's some things I would like to just express my thoughts on. But I think we have to give the License Commission some chance here, I think they're trying to give some leeway to the establishment owners. We don't want to chase businesses out of Lowell. We want them to come. We want them to flourish. But we want them to be good owners and responsible owners at the same time. So I support the motion, but I'll be there Thursday night to give my thoughts on the issues anyway. And I wish the new board the best of luck. And I know Mr. Krieg is sitting up above, and I wish the board the best and thank him for their service. Thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mayor. I too agree that the commissioner that we have now, they are doing their job and doing very well. The final draft of our regulations, license regulations, was put together after 5 public hearings and after input from our former superintendent of police. There was their recommendation. They weighed on it. It was their recommendations that last call be an hour before closing, half an hour, just half an hour, and the entertainment was an hour, and I worked down to 45 minutes. I think we can see it, we can put it as a special condition, and I think that we can ask the commissioner to look at it. What I'm fear is that we all know that Lowell is a destination city. I don't want it to be a destination for drinking. Because when you look at it, when you look at other cities and towns around us, they close in time at 1 o'clock. Billerica, Lauren, Tewksbury, Westwood, Chelmsford. You know, one too many already. Let's go to have the last one in Lowell. Let's just pee urinated or having disorderly conduct in Lowell. Guess who? This year, 2013, the police department budget for overtime or detail, over $100,000 for downtown. And a lot of these high-capacity bars are not mandated to have police detail. That leaves taxpayer to carry that burden. That concerns me. I agree to ask the License Commission to review it, maybe put it in special condition that impose on those establishments that's not regulate themselves. But I'm not going to tell them, pressure them, because they have 4 public hearings already, and they listened to the incorporated from the former police chief, superintendent, and some of us in this room. We'll add those public hearings, we'll add those meetings when the downtown was an issue. And now that is not, thanks to the commissioner, thanks to the police department, and thanks to some of those establishments who regulate themselves or police themselves. But do we relax, and now that it's okay, sit back and say, you know what, it's okay now, so we can go back to where we were? I think we should not. So, the police department, who's the one who know best, and that's what we, went to for recommendation, and that is their recommendation. I stay with them. And that's where I'll be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilman Johnson.
Just to weigh in on the topic, my position hasn't changed from when this started many months ago, when we were first considering how do we deal with these establishments that have proven themselves to be problems downtown. And I was hoping that the License Commission would give themselves the tools to be able to restrict those establishments that were proven to be a problem. But I didn't want it to add restrictions to establishments that hadn't caused any problems at all. So I was hoping for the License Commission to come up with a solution to give themselves the tools that they could address the problem establishments. I believe there's still time to do that, and they'll hear from the public, and I'm sure owners of many establishments that maybe they haven't heard up till now. But there are 2 new commissioners, and our police chief did change. And I do agree that when we first saw a proposal of rules changes, many of these things were under special conditions so that they didn't have to be applied to every establishment until there was a problem, and the License Commission would then choose to enforce that restriction against that particular establishment. I don't know the legalities of it, but I did want the License Commission to have that tool, and I was really hoping to not cause harm to establishments that have not been a problem through this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
That's the whole thing, Mr. Mayor. Exactly what he said is how I feel completely. I think rules should be in place and enforced to the maximum if someone violates these rules. But to paint a broad brush on the whole ordinance and make it strict right off the bat and make it tough on businesses that did not do any wrong, that's not fair, and and Joe said it so eloquently. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Entertained, then a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved by Council Lowry, seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We stand adjourned.